What up? I'm Alexa Van. This is the Bad Creatives podcast where I talk about everything created to being a bad creative. Wait, what was that sentence? The bad creatives. Yeah. Here on the Bad Creatives podcast, I talk about everything being related to being autistic, creative, entrepreneur, artist, weird freak, living in the world, trying to do whatever we're trying to do. And I am, as always, a little bit burnt out. Haha. Been trying to work on this, but God, there's just so much I want to do and I can't do everything. I'm still trying to accept that, but it's tough feeling like you're trying to keep up with yourself. I feel like I have autism and ADHD, and the ADHD in me is trying to do it all and it's so exciting and it's jumping around, and then the autism in me is like a dom and it's like, no, this is the structure, listen up and do it right. And those two, they're battling it out and I'm just along for the ride. I never know who is gonna win and now what time. It does leave me feeling a little burnt out. So today I wanted to talk to you about why goals don't work for me. After that intro though, you're probably like, how does anything work for you? But there's a reason why goals don't work for people like me. If you are a neurodivergent person, you're a very creative person, your mind doesn't work in the same way as other people. It's not going to be linear. And you may be a bottom-up processor, not a top-down processor. If you want to know exactly what that means, Google it and do some of your own research. But just a really quick recap of what that means. Bottom-up processing is when you take in all the details before you see the big picture. If you were to be looking at the forest, you would actually just see a bunch of trees first and then you go, oh, it's a forest. Whereas top-down processing is when you rely on what you already know, a collection of experiences from the past to answer questions about what is going on. So you would look at the forest and you would immediately see that because it's a bunch of trees, it's a forest. You wouldn't get too distracted by all the trees. That may or may not be the world's worst explanation of it. Here's why this is applicable, okay? There's not one way that's better than the other. They're just two totally different ways of experiencing the world and of thinking and processing. But if you don't know you're a neurodivergent person or a creative person that is a bottom-up processor and you're trying to do things the way that other people do it and you feel like you're beating your head against the wall, well, there's a reason for that. And this is where knowing this piece about yourself is going to completely change your life. I didn't know this about myself. I just thought that I was maybe stupid or just sucked at everything. So I didn't know how to trust my own intuition. I didn't know how to use my mind to my advantage. I was trying really hard to do it other people's way, and when I would fail, I would just try harder. So here's how this sort of fits into the world of being really goal-oriented. I don't believe I am much of a top-down processor. It doesn't mean I can't ever use any level of top-down processing and vice versa. I think it would mean like our default mode is one or the other. As a high-masking autistic woman, I obviously have tried very hard to do things other people's ways. It doesn't mean I can't do it their way. It just exhausts me and I don't get the same kind of results that they do. So being surrounded by people who are telling you to have goals, to have a 5-year plan, to decide what you want to do in your life and to map it out first with a strategy designed for people with an allistic or a neurotypical brain. People with that kind of neurotypical processing, they're going to be able to use their intuition to flow through that, and it's not going to feel like such a stretch for them. They have other things in place in their system to make top-down processing, how-to strategies, goal setting, linear. When you think neurotypical, think linear. A plus B equals C. I don't know why I decided that letters were going to add up to other letters instead of just using numbers, but that is what I chose and I'm just going to stick with it. However, if you are neurodivergent like me and you see all the details, I'm not going to intuitively know that A plus B equals C. I'm going to have to experience something that's going to explain why that is. I'm not just going to automatically know. It could be part of that brain not filtering out what is deemed as unnecessary information that neurotypicals have very handy for them at their disposal. But I'm going to speak through my own personal experience. So if it doesn't perfectly apply to you, I'm not trying to speak for every autistic person on the face of this planet. I'm just speaking through my experience because I think it's going to give a more real way of relating or not relating. So an example of how I realized that I don't have this kind of top-down processing is typical strategies and how-tos and goal setting. It's not that I can't do them, it's just my default setting is, why would I do that? I don't get it. Why would I set a goal? It makes no sense to my intuitive self to do that. So of course I have forced myself to do that because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. Set goals, have a linear path, have a plan, and everything will go whatever way. What happens for me when I do that is I feel like I'm constantly forcing myself, I'm constantly pushing, and I don't even know why I want to go where I'm going because I'm not in touch with my intuition. I don't get to use the intuition the way neurotypical people do. I'll get into that later. My intuition, the way I experience the world, the way I make decisions, and the way I move through life is based on my feelings and my sensations, which is actually quite ancient. I mean, we were designed to first be instinctual and have senses and have feelings and then intuit that and then run that up to your brain to process and use discernment to know what to do with. But it's as if you're living each moment very viscerally, very in the now, which is a lot of information to take in at any given moment, which makes sense why we burn out more. This is why we get more overstimulated. When I try to have a linear path, a plan, a goal, a blueprint designed for somebody not like me, I don't understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. Therefore, I don't feel it. I have no connection to it and no connection to my intuition. I'm trying really hard to reach for my mind, like doubling down on logic and trying to be really, really smart and just basically not embodied about it. And then it's almost like I'm living someone else's life at this point. My metaphor for it would be I'm a river, I'm flowing, and I'm trying to just put a traffic light in the middle of a river to make it stop or go. It's just not gonna work. It's not how I flow. Ooh, I didn't mean to rhyme. Cool. This doesn't mean I don't have dreams. This doesn't mean I don't have my own version of goals, and it doesn't mean that I don't know how to plan things, but I have to do it in a different version. And I feel this is really important to talk about because if you're trying to do things other people's way and it just doesn't work for you, good news. It doesn't have to. There's other ways of working with the bottom-up processing. Even when you learn how to design a business, they're not teaching you from the bottom up. They're teaching you a top-down strategy. Even bottom-up processing people find their end goal strategy and then they try to repurpose that and sell that to you, but it's flipped at that point to be a top down. Even though it may fit you a little bit better, it's still not necessarily going to work for you. I'm going to help you through my own experience. I'm going to paint you a picture of what it feels like for me to be a bottom-up processor and how I experience my life and why it wouldn't make any sense for me to have neurotypical linear goals. I experience the world like a spiralically. I think for me, it was really important to learn this for myself because I feel this. Like I said, I sense things and I feel them. And that is what I move from. And that is what tells me what to do next. Not the plan, not the strategy, the feeling. And pause to say, women have been criticized for letting their emotions get the best of them, for being hysterical. So if for me, I don't feel safe to trust my feelings, or if you have trauma in your life and now your body feels it's in a fight or flight in a survival mode, all of those things are going to make it a little bit harder to feel and to intuit what is the right decision and what is coming from a place of fear. Even though it is my natural way of being, it hasn't always felt accessible to me in the way that it is now. Now that I've been consciously leaning into this, I can see how it never fails me. With that in mind, I just wanted to say it's not like it's something like a switch that you could just turn on and off, especially if you've been masking or you were late diagnosed. You maybe don't even know that this is something that you have been doing or not doing. I experience the world, my life, as a spiral, and I see it really zoomed in on something. And then it goes over here, and I'm like, oh, where is this leading me? And then it comes back around. Wait, this seems really far away from there, but I'm just gonna trust it. Every time, like the pinpoint of this spiral is zoomed in AF. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I'm back here again, but in a different way. And now I have more information. And then the spiral, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden, at some point, it's not just about the one thing I'm doing. It's whatever I'm doing is this like a magnifying glass that's moving in this cyclical way. At some point, I take a step back. And because I have collected all of these details, experienced all of these experiences so viscerally, so intensely, I guess you could say, I start to see this big picture after. It makes sense to me after. And because I experienced it in the way that I did, the patterns reveal themselves to me in a way that makes sense to me, because it's not just about the thing that I was focused on at any given moment. It's about my entire life. So I'm never just taking in this tiny thing. It's that teeny thing that's painting the color of my life, and it's leading me to the next thing, like a flow. When I take a step back and I'm looking at this whole big picture, everything makes sense to me through this lens now. Everything fits into place. I have this really big picture that's very like, wow. Everything's connected. It's very magical, really. And at any point on this wheel, I can do that. But I can't do that at the very beginning of something that I have never done before. I have to be able to go around the spiral and gather information for a while before I can do that thing where I step back, see the pattern. And then once I see the pattern, a strategy that makes sense to me, how my intuition works within that, where I'm going to go next will feel right. It's not going to be because I read it in a book. It's not going to be because some guru said so, unless it feels right. Of course, I could hear something and I'm like, yeah, that feels right. Even when I do something that doesn't feel right, it still leads me to the next place. Maybe right or wrong isn't the perfect word to use here, but I make adjustments accordingly based on how each new piece of information that reveals itself feels, lands, and how I experience it. I have to go through it and I have to experience it to a point to be able to make a judgment based off of like, this just isn't it. Or, oh, this led me over here. It's an entire experience. It's quite an adventure. So when you live your life that way, when you experience things that way, can you imagine trying to squish that into a linear 5-year plan? I wouldn't be learning or living my life at all. It would be cutting myself off from the very thing that makes life feel worth living. The experience of it. That is my compass. I have learned the hard way so many times because I want to trust that part of myself and I want to flow with that, but I cut it off too soon and I give myself a weird arbitrary timeline that was totally unnecessary. My process works really well, really efficiently, and it feels good and it makes sense to my body. I'm going to give an example that's a little bit less abstract. When I wrote my book, I did not plan to write a book. I did not know I was writing a book. I did not have a strategy. It was something that I've always wanted to do, but there was never this year I'm going to write a book. And I'm going to finish it by this time, and I'm going to write this amount of pages every day, and it'll be done by January, and then I'll move into the next phase. That did not exist for me. What happened was I was a musician. COVID happened. My band and I couldn't rehearse anymore. Instead of just writing music, this is a great time to pivot and express writing in different ways, like creative writing, in ways I haven't in a while. So I started writing short stories just for fun. I started writing short stories, and then I would record myself reading them out loud just for fun because it felt right. And then one day, my short story just went on and on. And I remembered these ideas that I have had over all the years, and all of a sudden they formed into this big picture. I was like, oh, something clicked. This book, I'm telling you, poured out of me. It was not hard. I did not need a strategy. I did not need a goal. I did not need to force myself to write a certain amount of pages every day. It felt 100% organic. I'm not saying there weren't days where I was a little stumped on how to piece something together or where to take it next. It always felt like a really fun challenge that I appreciated, and it felt really organic, and it was easy to follow along to the next phase of the book. So it was never a push. I didn't need the how-to strategy. And then when the first pass of the book was done, I started doing some research on how long books should be, like backwards. I'm like, okay, I guess now I should know, like, what does it mean to write a book? How do you do that? Then I went back through with this big, huge mess I had made by dumping myself into the story and feeling it out. Then I went back through and started editing it and seeing the patterns and seeing where it was going to go, and everything clicked. It felt really good. And I didn't go to school for that. I didn't have a strategy to follow. And I honestly think that that's why this was so easy for me, because I believe if I had had something in my head telling me how to do this beforehand, that I probably would have accidentally stopped my natural flow. So because I didn't have that, I was able to just go wild, and it worked for me. Each next step revealed itself to me intuitively that it was time to do that. I didn't need arbitrary markers of time. Oh, now it's time for this, or now it's time for that. I would literally go to dinner with somebody and I'd be like, I wrote this book, but I don't really know what to do with it. Oh, you should talk to Hannah. Hannah's an editor, and I sent her the first 3 chapters as a trial edit, and we decided to move forward, and I had a professional editor now helping me out. Then we went into that spiral again, but with that, each new step revealed itself when it was time, until the book was being held in my hand. Every time I tried to put a marker on the time of when it would be finished or when something would be done, I never once hit that marker, ever. Not one time. I didn't need to, because I was doing things my own way. So it was like, why can't I just bump my own timeline? Like, who cares? I don't need the weird fake marker of a timeline, because I'm not worried about being afraid to motivate myself, because I'm doing this from a way that feels organic and easy to sustain. Long story short, learning how you flow with something and giving yourself free rein to explore that. You may get all the information about something before you get started. And that's bottom-up processing, like gathering all the information and throwing yourself into this world and then just going for it and making a mess and then cleaning it up later. If you don't have any prior experience with something, you might need to go through this bottom-up processing. I hope it helps, because it really, really helped me to finally get to see and get to name my way of moving through the world, and to start to unlearn why these how-to strategies don't work for me. I can make them work for me if I try hard enough. It's just not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be enjoyable. It's never going to feel organic, and it's unnecessary, because this whole other world out here of a way of making things work for me in a way that I want to experience the world, and I want to be sharing that, and I want to be spreading that in the world. Learning how to trust my intuition to work for me through this big spiralic loop, and to always lead me to the next place that I need to go on my journey. I have no idea where this is going to lead me next, and that's really exciting. And I don't really feel like I need to put these stop signs or traffic lights in the river to say, well, this amount of time I'm going to have, this amount of subscribers. It's just like the next step will reveal itself, and I'm learning to trust that about myself, and that when I'm listening to all these top-down strategies, it's not that I don't listen to them at all. I take them all in, I listen to all of them, I find the patterns. So I can see what's true through all of them. I listen to their way and then somebody who's opposing their way of how to do something. And I find the ultimate pattern, the ultimate truth. And then I explore with that. And then I usually end up throwing it all away and doing it the way that I want to do it anyway. It does feel like a fun, wild ride for me. I hope you figure out what your way is, and I'm very curious to hear what it is. If you still want to have a way of marking your progress so that you feel like you don't get too off track, you're not ready to go fully into the wild, but just trusting your intuition all the time forever, which can be tough, like for the reasons I mentioned. You could have a lot of trauma stored in your body. You could be having problems with disassociation. Maybe the jobs you have don't allow you to really lean into that. I get it. It's not always that easy when we live in a world that wasn't fully designed to support people like us. What you could try, instead of setting goals or instead of having the same kind of linear markers for things as other people do, switch to setting intentions. Intentions are feeling based, they're sensation based. Of course, you could say, I intend to be a millionaire, but intentions, they work best when you know why you want that and you feel into the why. A goal could be, I want $1 million and this is how I'm going to get it. You don't need to feel anything about that. When you're setting an intention, you don't need to know where you're going to go. That's the best part about this. You don't need to know what it looks like and you don't need to know where you're going to go with it. I know the sensations I want to experience. I know what I want to feel. And I know to some extent some kind of adventures that I want to have and things I want to move towards and things I want to move away from. So when I'm setting my intention, I'll give you an example. I intend to receive money in a way that feels easeful, that flows naturally and organically from speaking my truth and sharing my experiences in whatever form or frequency feels right for me. I'm being very vulnerable and telling you my intentions. Another one might be, I intend to have more space in my life for what I love, for who I want to be around. I intend to have honest, authentic connections with like-minded people. I intend to be surrounded by supportive people and to feel loved and appreciated and to love and appreciate other people. So when you're setting your intentions, I'm giving these examples. The point is of the intention is it's not just about what you want, it's about why you want it. Because for me, if I had said, I want to write a book and this is how many pages and this is the strategy and blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, what I really wanted was this intention of I intend to express myself freely and openly and wildly and to give myself this experience of getting to go on this wild adventure right now and see it through. So there's less of a marker of knowing when you got there because obviously our feelings and sensations change, they ebb and they flow. But if you're constantly feeling stuck, small, icky, bad, it's going to be a lot easier for you to know that something that you're doing isn't aligning with that and to adjust accordingly and to just keep setting those intentions based on the feelings and start to lean into that and to grow that and to expand that because that will come with you wherever you are on your journey, on your spiralic journey. Then you don't have to be always looking outside of yourself for evidence of it because you'll know on the inside that you are on the right path for you. That's what I've been doing and it has been feeling way better, way more sustainable and easier to come back from when I accidentally go back up into my mind to try to solve problems beforehand because I'm afraid of how it's going to go. But I might know intuitively, even though on paper it seems like a no, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to follow my intuition and that random ass thing might lead me to the place I really needed to go. It's all about the journey, not the destination. I know I say that a lot, but the journey is the destination. Whatever that comes up, it's not in the way. It is the way. Trust that when these things come up and they feel like they're blocking you and you're beating your head up against the wall, you have so much magic. You have so much to work with. And it's just about learning to understand how you work and to support that so that you can get to experience that more and have more freedom to be who you really are and live a life that feels true to you. Make a big mess because you'll clean it up later. But if you don't get in there and get your hands dirty, you're not going to get anything done. Okay, I love you. Bye. The bad creatives, yeah. The bad creative, the bad